Public speaking advice. My first YouTube video of me talking into the camera. Let's see how it goes. So I'm gonna do a video about my advice on public speaking. I'm gonna say a little bit about why I'm making the video, and then why I feel like I'm in a position to, or what my experience is of public speaking, and then I'll get into the advice. So the reason I'm making the video is because last week, or a couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues at work who's getting married said that his best man had come to him and said that he doesn't think he can give a best man speech because he's really nervous about it. And he's done like a presentation at work before, like a couple of months before, and it had flopped completely, and he'd completely crashed and burned. And he's not a confident public speaker. I said he's like an anxious person, and so he doesn't feel like he can do it. And my colleague knows that I've got some experience of anxiety and public speaking, and so he asked me if I could maybe give his friend some advice. And I said, yeah, of course, 100%, I'd really like to do that. And so over the next couple of weeks, I thought about what I was going to say, kind of got some content together about what I thought was most useful to tell him. But then sadly, he decided that he didn't want to do it, and he wasn't going to be able to do it, and he'd made that decision, so I never actually ended up speaking to him. But I figured I'd put the time in and whatever, had these thoughts about what my advice would be. So if I can't give it to him, then why not make a YouTube video, and hopefully someone out there can find it useful. So that's why I'm making the video. My experience with public speaking, so basically I used to I had problems with anxiety when I was younger, mostly from the age of like 16 to, let's say 21, 22, when it was really bad, and mostly that was when I was at university. Since then, I've kind of gone on a recovery, or whatever however you want to put it, and I'm at a point where I'm really good now. Like, I work as an engineer. I've been graduated from uni for a few years. I'm 24 now, and when I was 22, so relatively recently, I would say, after I'd kind of got to a pretty good point, I actually went back to my old school and did a talk about mental health and about my experience and recovery from anxiety and what happened to me. And that was in front of about 450 people. So that was a big deal for me, especially because my anxiety was like social anxiety, and it was focused around feeling nauseous and being sick. That's what used to happen to me all the time. And so doing a talk in public in front of 450 people, doing like a talk like that, was a real, it's like an archetypal anxiety provoking situation. So that was a big deal for me to be able to do that. And the reason I was able to do that is because through dealing with my anxiety issues, I've learned a huge amount over years and years and years about how to deal with my anxiety. So much so where now I'm at a point where I've got it under really, really good control. And I've realised that the advice that that I've learned for myself is useful for people who don't have anxiety issues, but for normal people to deal with situations that are anxiety provoking, and one of those is public speaking. So I'm basically going to share my thoughts on what I think is the most useful advice that I have about public speaking, and hopefully it'll be of help to someone. And it's a shame that I couldn't have been my mate's best man, but hey ho, he should have listened to my advice. Maybe he'd have been able to do it. So 7 things I'm going to go through. First one is that public speaking is a really difficult thing to do. It's like a skill that you have to practice to get good at. And if you're not someone who's done public speaking before, and you say you're like a nervous person, or you don't like speaking in front of people, or you haven't practiced it for work and whatever, you're not going to be able, let's use the example of the best man speech, you're very unlikely, or it's a very high bar for you to set yourself if your expectation is that you're going to go up there, not be nervous, give like a really compelling, emotionally relevant, heartwarming, funny, charming best man speech. It's such a high target to set for yourself. It's like if your best man asked you to do an Olympic dive for him, you wouldn't think, oh God, I'm going to try and do like a triple backflip off the 10-meter board when you've never practiced diving before, and just hope you didn't do a massive belly flop and muck it up in front of everyone. You just wouldn't do that. You'd try and do a little, in and maybe not make a big splash, and that's all you can realistically aim for. Yeah, so if you know you're not good at public speaking and you're not particularly practiced at public speaking, then you need to be realistic about what you should aim for. And like for example, when I did my first talk at school when I was 22, and I was petrified that I was going to throw up or burst into tears halfway through, I didn't try and do like like how I described the ideal best man speech. I literally wrote out exactly what I wanted to say. I went up there, I read it word for word. I didn't worry about my delivery too much. I just tried to speak in a clear voice and get through the content, and not throw up on the floor or burst into tears halfway through. And I managed that because that was a bite off. That was a chunk I could bite off. Whereas if I'd gone into it trying to be all flamboyant and engage the crowd and get them laughing and go off piece and get away, just have prompts rather than notes, then I wouldn't have been able to do it. So so that's the point with that, is set the bar where at an appropriate level for your skill, like you would with anything else, and don't expect too much from yourself, because you're setting yourself up to fail basically. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, which kind of links to this, is first thing you need to do is focus on having good content. And good content is something you can prepare before. So like I said, if you feel like you can just get to a point where you want to read something off a page and you write all your notes down, focus on those being really, really good. And you can put as much time and effort into the writing that content as it takes. And good content doesn't really mean that it has, like I said, be hilarious or whatever. Good content is honest and heartfelt, real content. And if you're honest and you're real and you're heartfelt, just reading those words will be inherently like you've done the job already. And delivery and that sort of thing, and throwing a joke in there, that's just kind of like extra niceness on top that will make it, bring it up a notch, I guess. But the important thing is you get through what you want to say. And again, using the example of the best man speech, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you there? You haven't been asked to do the best man speech because you need like a comedy halftime show. The reason he's asked you to do it is because you're his good mate, and it's significant, and he's chosen you as his best friend to kind of like say some words of how important your friendship is to each other, and how glad you are and happy that he is that he's found love or whatever. Like, that's the important thing. The rest of it is all just it's added extras, and they're not important. Point number three is to practice. I know that sounds stupid, but not just to practice, but practice in front of people as well. Because, for example, when I did my talk the second time round, I was less nervous because I'd done it before, but I was more nervous because I knew how emotional I got the first time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to burst into tears. Like, last time I only just managed getting through the whole thing, and then I actually burst into tears at the end, but luckily I had time to get off the stage. And then next time going into it, I was like, oh God, I just about managed it last time. What if this time I cry halfway through in front of like 450 people? How like embarrassing and terrible would that be? So that was kind of like my main thing. The main thing that made me nervous the second time around when I went to do it was that fear of getting over emotional, basically. And I knew it was going to happen. I knew when I was reciting, I would not be able to get through it without the emotion bubbling up, because I was writing like emotionally provocative stuff, I guess. Like, it was sincere to me, and it's like a tough time for me. So reading it out and talking about it like it's inherently emotional stuff, the anxiety stuff. And what I actually ended up doing was I read it to my grandma and my mum, which is something I hadn't really done before. I normally just done it myself, practiced it myself, and that was it. And I found it kind of embarrassing to actually do it in front of other people when I was practicing. But I did it in front of my mum and my grandma, and got to like an emotional point, and I just cried, burst into tears there and then. And it's because I'd built it up, I guess, in my head that I was expecting to cry and expecting to get emotional. But then once I then read it through again afterwards, it was like I got the emotion out, and I didn't feel it. It didn't provoke any emotion in me in the same way. Not like lip wobbling, oh God, I'm gonna burst into tears kind of emotion. And I think it's because I got it out through practicing it in front of my mum and my grandma. And the same is true of nervousness as well. You'll get some of the nerves out if you practice it in front of people, because doing it to yourself just in your head and reciting it is one thing. then performing it in front of one person that you trust is another level. And then it's just reduces the step up to the day when you do have to do it in front of everyone else. And so anything you can do to reduce the step and get more practice is a good thing. And so doing it in front of other people is really important. The fourth thing is, and I've written them down here, that's why I keep looking down here, just so I don't forget them, but the fourth thing is to expect to feel nervous. Getting nervous before doing something like a public speaking is basically unavoidable. 99% of people that do it would get nervous beforehand. Top business people who have done 100 talks before get nervous before they do public speaking. It's a terrifying thing. It's incredibly anxiety and nerve-provoking thing, and it's unavoidable. And again, bringing it back to my own example, I used to think that getting nervous, once I felt nervous beforehand, I was like, oh God, no, nerves have started, it's only going to get worse, they're going to snowball into the point where I'm just going to get halfway through the talk and I'm going to completely crumble. And that made it a lot worse. I used to panic. I used to start getting nervous and I was panicking that it would keep on getting worse. And panic is your worst enemy when you're trying to do public speaking. If you start panicking, then it's really difficult to bring yourself back. And so now what I kind of expect to feel nervous, and that means when I feel nervous, it's not something that worries me. I'm like, okay, yeah, here it is. I'm feeling nervous. This is just part of the wave I've got to ride, and they will go. And nerves always go, especially once you start getting into it. They tend to I've always found they tend to elapse once you actually get into the meat of the speech, and you find your rhythm or whatever. The most nerve-wracking point is just before and right at the beginning of your talk, but once you're like a minute in, they'll start to subside. And so it's really important to try and to not let those nerves get the better of you in the immediate beforehand. And one of the big things is to just expect to feel nervous and embrace it. And if you're feeling nervous, don't let that freak you out. Just, as I say, it's part of the process, and everyone would be nervous in that situation. Point number 5 is to remember why you're doing it. And the relevance of that is, again, especially immediately before doing a talk, you'll start to get really nervous, and you'll have negative thoughts that go through your head. Oh God, imagine how embarrassing this is going to be when I muck it up in front of everyone. Oh God, I'm totally going to bomb this. Oh, this is going to be terrible, blah, blah, blah. And those sorts of thoughts, again, they are like panic provoking. They exacerbate the situation, and you need to try and get yourself out of your head, because if you stay in your headspace, then you'll just freak yourself out, and you all of these kind of things, they all exacerbate each other. So panic will make you more nervous, being nervous will make you more panicky, the negative thoughts will make you more panic. When you're panicking, you have more negative thoughts, and then you need to try and snap out of it, essentially. And so what I've done previously is I've actually written down things that are positive about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it when I'm not feeling nervous, so like a few days before. And this is ridiculously useful, I have found, for nipping the nerves in the bud and nipping the negative thoughts in the bud, especially the negative thoughts. And I'll write stuff like, remember why you're doing it, why you're doing this. You're doing this because, for me, it was like, you're doing this because you want to make sure that other people don't go through the same problems with anxiety that you had, without any knowledge of what anxiety was. And that's essentially one of my biggest problems. I'd write stuff like, you're doing this because it's difficult, not because it's easy. In 10 minutes this will be done, and it'll all be finished. You won't have to worry about it anymore. Imagine how good you're going to feel about this once you've finished it and you've done it, and you've done what you set out to do. Things like that, and makes such a big difference. Such a big difference. So definitely do that, and remember the positivity around the situation, because, for example, giving a best man speech, there's nothing negative about that. That is a beautiful, positive situation, and it's brilliant. And to literally just, I think when you get wrapped up in your nervousness, you can lose sight of that, and to bring yourself back to the goodness of the situation sounds kind of stupid, but it makes a big difference. So that's another important thing that I found that helps. Where are we at now? Number 6 and number 7 are kind of similar, they link. So I'll read them both together. So number 6 is know that deep down, if you get to a point where you cannot do it, that you don't have to do it. And number 7 is tell the groom. So that's in the situation of the best man speech, obviously. But whoever represents the groom in your situation. So if this is, you have to do a presentation for work and you're feeling super nervous about it, tell your boss that you're feeling super nervous about it. If you're meant to be doing the best man speech and you're feeling super nervous and you think there's a chance you might not be able to do it, tell the groom that you think there's a chance you might not be able to do it. And the reason for that is that you can plan your escape route, and you don't have to, you then know that if you get to a point where you're not going to be able to do it, and that is a possibility, you've already planned how that is going to pan out. And so then as you're preparing over like the weeks leading up to it, rather than thinking, oh God, I've got to get this right, or this is going to be completely awful, I'm going to ruin my best mate's wedding, and blah, 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 blah. It's, I'm going to, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to really try my best to get to a point where I feel like I can do this. And if not, fine. I've already spoken to my best man, and I'm not going to do it. And that alleviates so much pressure. And at the end of the day, that is the truth of the situation. You don't have to do it. Like, you are in complete control of whether you actually do the talk or whatever it is. You can back out if you need to. And having control of the situation is, again, something which I've found just alleviates that panic. And if you feel trapped in a situation, that is something which is inherently panic-provoking and will increase the nerves load. So, I guess that's it, really. It's to know how you're going to get out of the situation. And I mentioned a minute ago, it's about an escape route. And I used to find this with my anxiety problems a lot. So it was social anxiety. And a big thing would be at parties. That was like a good situation where I really struggled with social anxiety. And like I said, my thing was around nauseousness and being sick. And it used to make me sick all the time. And one of the big things I found was that if I went into a situation where I knew it was going to be anxiety provoking and I would be struggling, that if I had planned in my head what was going to happen if I freaked out and had, let's say, an anxiety attack or whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to be sick, what am I going to do? And I would literally be like, right, if I'm going to have an anxiety attack and be sick, I'm going to go out through the back door, I'm going to go to that bush, and I'm going to be sick. That is what I'm going to do. And that is my escape route. And having that, it sounds stupid, but it was such a big thing in helping me helping me get over my problems. And I think that is the reason, is because you then don't feel trapped in the situation, because you know how you're going to get out of it. And if you don't have that, then it could be something which really exacerbates the situation. And then obviously that's in the immediate sense, but in the time leading up to it, it's the exact same thing. Like in the 2 weeks before, you can feel trapped in the situation of knowing that you're going to have to give the best man speech, and knowing that you have an out is a huge thing that will stop you getting completely panicked about the situation, because you know if you're going to do your best to try and do it, and if you can't, you can't, and what more can they ask of you? But yeah, so that is really it on the advice front. If you got to the end of the video, thanks a lot for watching. Drop it a like, I guess, and comment in the comments if you think there's anything else that you think you found useful, or if there's anything you think I'm chatting shit about, or if you found it useful or anything like that. So yeah, anyway, cheers guys, thanks a lot.